My name is Tomas Rivera. I'm with Chainbreaker. I'm just going to give a little bit about what Chainbreaker is. Chainbreaker is a membership-led economic and environmental justice organization. We have over 600 dues-paying members in Santa Fe. We've been around for 14 years, and we decided to host this panel in lieu of doing candidates forums. As you probably know, we're in the midst of an election cycle right now, and there's a lot of talk about who's running and what they want to do. We wanted to flip the script a little bit and say this is what the people want you to hear. So we're hoping that they hear us here. We're also in the middle of a citywide voter education campaign. We're knocking on 10,000 doors. We already have started doing several hundred of those. This is our first ranked choice election here in Santa Fe. So we're putting a lot of helping people understand what it means to do ranked choice voting, and also we're going to be releasing a voter guide in a couple weeks so people understand what the candidates' positions are on the issues that are important to us, particularly regarding equity. Just wanted to give a quick definition. When we talk about equity, we're not talking about equality necessarily. We're talking about justice. We're talking about equal access to resources and equal exposure to risks. That's how we're defining equity. And we know that there's a big issue with that in Santa Fe. We consider ourselves in the midst of an equity crisis. So we've been talking about that for the last couple of years, and we wanted to talk about the specific issues related to equity, what helps bring it about and what hinders it. And so tonight we have education without displacement as part of our Edge of Equity Development Without Displacement conversations. I'm going to pass the mic over to Miguel Angel Acosta, who is going to be moderating for you tonight. Thank you so much.
All righty. So today's conversation, education without displacement, we talked to lots and lots of folks as we're putting together tonight's activity. Lots of questions, lots of conversations, lots of ideas came up. We're not going to address them all, but hopefully the themes that came up will be at some point covered by panelists or by your questions. When we talk about education, we want to make sure that everyone understands that we're not talking just about schools. Education, the way I approach the work, is everything that we as a community decide is worth doing, and how we provide the opportunity, worth knowing, and how we provide the opportunities for our community to know those things and be able to move on to another level of community. So everything that happens, schools, our young people and our not so young people spend about 17% of their time if they're going to school full time. That's whether they're in K-12 or in higher education. It's a small percentage of our time that we're actually dealing directly with schools. The rest of the education system is all the rest of us. All the things that happen, all the opportunities that get provided, and all the ones that don't. That's why tonight's conversation. So one of the things you hear a lot, especially in K-12 education, is that your zip code is a good indicator of outcomes, of school achievement, of school outcomes. Well, your zip code is also a good indicator of the opportunities that you get in the first place. All of our institutions are trying to do more, are trying to do better, are trying to partner as much as possible with other entities and with community to be able to provide a more integrated education to all of our folks. It's difficult, and those are the things that we're going to talk about tonight. But it is doable. So questions that came up during the conversations, it's always, okay, so how do we fix schools? Right? If it was an engineering kind of activity where we could just go and squeeze something tighter, use more bolts, turn on more lights or what have you, we would have done it years ago. It's a lot more complicated than just fixing schools. It's really a conversation about how we as a community support learning and support education across the board. Some of the things that impact displacement, this came up in many of our conversations. Again, poverty is a big, a huge impact on our populations, especially in our public schools. Poverty not only provides, or not only keeps opportunities from being provided to young people or to families, it also moves us to different places where those opportunities don't even exist. So things like gentrification here in the city have had a huge impact on our ability to provide opportunities for young people and supports for families. As more and more of our families have been pushed further and further south, away from services, away from the schools, away from the spaces and the other kinds of things that support families. Families have struggled more. Young people have struggled more. Education has been a lot more difficult. Decisions to close schools has happened in the last couple of years. We had conversations about schools possibly closing. That has a huge impact on communities. Decisions about boundaries and attendance and all that also has a huge impact. These are all things that happen not in a vacuum, but through conversations, through committees, and through commissions. Oftentimes we don't know which ones they are, or when they meet, or why they're important, but these are the kinds of things that we want to make sure we talk about tonight to some degree. So we're going to get started here in a minute. We've got a panel of experts, and they're experts because they're all women. We planned it that way, right? We've got with us, starting on my left, which is always my favorite direction. Yeah, we have with us Linda Siegel, who's a trustee at the Santa Fe Community College and also president of Resources for Change. I won't go into all the details. It's in your program. We've got Patricia Gay Webb, who is a dual language teacher at El Camino Real Academy, and also is political chair at the National Education Association. We've got Ruby Lopez, who's an educator with EarthCare in our sustainability education program and works at the elementary level. And we've got Patricia Trujillo, Professor Patricia Trujillo from Northern New Mexico College, who leads the Director of Equity and Diversity and an associate professor in language and literature at Northern New Mexico College. So we're going to start by posing questions. Well, actually, we're going to start by introductions. Each one will have 5 minutes. And again, we'll start to my left. 5 minutes to share with us some ideas, in particular, including a response to a prompt that we gave them about how educational inequity impacted them at some point in their lives, in the lives of the people around them, or in their social setting as a whole. So we'll get started. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Linda Siegel, and as indicated, I'm the chair of the Community College Board, and so we address a lot of issues of equity and inequity. In my professional life, I am a lobbyist. I represent a lot of nonprofit organizations, a lot of healthcare providers, and I do represent the Santa Fe Public Schools, which that is always a great effort. The public schools, districts, and the charter schools put a great deal of effort into lobbying the legislature and trying to make sure that they're getting sufficient funds to take care of their students. And of course, that's not been happening. In my own life around education issues, I actually have been pretty lucky. I came from a working class family in El Paso, and it was always assumed that I would go to college. But it was never really figured out how that we would pay for that college. So what I did is I pretty much ended up working full time. And in those days, you could actually work and pay for college, unlike tuition costs today, where it's practically impossible, unless you're really supported by your family and you go to some place with good quality education but lower tuition, like community colleges, where you can at least get your first 2 years, and then we offer so many other opportunities for learning, for certificates, for workforce training that may get you a job really quickly. I think that what we've seen at the college over the last 26 years that has it been 20 years that I've been on the board, a lot of growth and development from our original days of starting out in Valdez Industrial Park with a couple of rooms to the incredible campus that we have with lots of trades and technology offerings. And this great building, this was a vision of Sheila Ortega, who was our president a while ago, to build a place where we could have other higher ed institutions, four-year schools, come and offer completion degrees from our students who may get an associate degree in something and want to get a bachelor's degree and stay in our community, work in our community, go to school in our community. And this has been a great collaboration with Northern New Mexico College, Highlands University. Highlands is our biggest collaborator, offering most of the degrees, and UNM and some private schools which we're working with. So it's a commitment to this community to really bring education to the people who live here, and so you don't have to go to Albuquerque or even to Las Vegas to finish your degree. I'll end on that.
So my name is Patricia Webb, and I had been a teacher in Santa Fe Public School, and I'm not representing my school here, but I'm very proud to be a teacher in El Camino Real Academy. I also have been a member of NEA, Santa Fe, the Political Action Chair. But I'm originally from Argentina, and I had been very lucky also to work internationally, so I think my perspective is a little more big to have the experience to live in different countries and in different systems. So in my original country, Argentina, we do have free education through the universities, so we don't need to have a loan or get in debt or anything. You just have in the public universities, it's free. And I'm a product of that. And so for me, it has been always so obvious that this is the way it should be. And I cannot understand how this country has not arrived yet to that point. It's just, it's very strange. The same with health. So, yes. I work a lot in environmental. That's my first career in environmental issues, and I did work in the city of Buenos Aires in creating the Commission of Citizen Participation and Environmental Education. So I think that could be some of the things we can talk later about the needs of these connections between the community and the people. I think I'm a privileged for this context about education. I also did a master in this country, which I'm still paying for, a loan, yes. So, and yes, we, regarding the school, we work in a dual language context. We work with immigrants or children of immigrants. So we live day to day the needs of these communities. And so I think I'm done. It's okay.
Hello, I'm Ruby Lopez, and I am a graduate of Santa Fe High in 2016. As Miguel mentioned, I am a sustainability educator with Earth Care. But equity in education has always been something very close to my heart because, well, at Santa Fe High, there are two very distinct tracks that students can go down. There is a wonderful AP program there, but then there's everybody else. And a big issue with the AP program is it's small. There, in my junior year history class, there was 40, oh, there were, oh, look, there we go, okay. Sorry. There were 42 students on the first day, and my friend was friends with the teacher. He had already taken her class before, and so she warned him there is going to be a lot of extra work within the first 3 weeks. That way she could weed out the people that weren't going to be committed to the class, that wouldn't be able to keep up with the course load, even though things would calm down by the end of those 3 weeks. The majority of the students that were not able to stay in that class, myself included, were low-income students, students that did not have the resources or parents at home that would be able to help with the course load, students that may have come up through a lower income elementary and middle school who had gaps in their education. And so these kids that were already very advanced, very privileged in the sense that they were ready and able to take this course were able to stay. But when it comes to low-income students, it's harder. We don't have access to these same resources at home. A lot of it, when we talk about equity in education, we think about how the school is treating the students, how the district is treating the students, but we don't think in terms of accommodations for students that may also be needing to work, students that maybe are one of the main providers for their family. I know several students that dropped out, that way they could make sure that their young siblings did not starve because they needed to get another job. I worked throughout my senior year and my junior year, and actually I worked in middle school some as well. And I did all of this stuff, but I wasn't able, because of all of the different extracurricular activities that I participated in order to make some extra money, I wasn't able to keep up with as much of the course load. So not only did I transfer out of that history class into a much slower paced history class that I didn't get as much information in, but I was also kicked out of my math class because I was not able to keep up with the course load. Because during high school, I actually had to commute from Espanola. I came to Santa Fe High here, but I was commuting every day, and I didn't get home until about 7:30 every night. So I'd be gone 12 hours of the day, and I would not have time to work on my homework. And so because of these things that are in my way, I was in the car for 2 hours a day, 2 hours that could have been spent doing homework. I wasn't able to take a lot of the classes that I would have liked. I actually ended up failing one of my history classes because the teacher did not like that, even though I understood the concepts and everything, I couldn't keep up with the homework. So I guess I've gone on a tangent. I guess my main point is a lot of what we need to consider when we're thinking about students and what their needs are is not just looking at what the resources that are available to them in the school and in the classroom, but also what is available at home and what expectations don't make sense for students that have to work, that have to take care of their family. And maybe students that don't have a parent that can come to the school to advocate for them. I actually never got my transcripts. There was a huge issue with transcripts the year that I graduated, and a lot of students were able to get theirs and a lot of students weren't able to. The students that were able to get theirs were usually students who had parents that didn't have to work. My mom worked 2 jobs and my dad was very ill in high school. And so I didn't have a parent that could come to the school and advocate for me. So if I wanted to say like, hey, this isn't right, I need my transcripts or I need this done in order for me to graduate, I would have to miss class in order to go do that. Whereas other students could just have somebody come and do it for them. So I think that's,
Buenos tardes, Le de Dios. My name is Patricia Trujillo, and I work at Northern New Mexico College. And before I get started, I just want us to pay respect to and also understand that we are on the ancestral lands of the Tewa people. This place is originally known as Ogohapoge, I'm probably mispronouncing that, Owinge. And especially I'd like to send prayers and blessings to our brothers and sisters at San Ildefonso Pueblo who danced all day because it's their feast day today. And so when they dance for all of us. And so just in that acknowledgement. We were told or asked to tell a story about ourselves, and I was born and raised in Española, New Mexico, so you might wonder why I'm on a panel talking about public education in Santa Fe. But that's really because I did grow up in some ways in the Santa Fe public schools because both of my parents were teachers here. My dad taught for over 30 years at Gonzales Elementary, and my mom taught for about 22 years at Largoita Elementary, and then finished her career at Poake. And then they both went on to work at the day school at Okeowinge Pueblo. And that is to say that those are my parents. My grandmother graduated in 1932 from the Spanish American Normal School, which was the teacher college in northern New Mexico that was constitutionally created in 1909 before we were a state. And so I like to imagine that she was part of some of the first waves of teachers in New Mexico. And she went on to graduate with a degree from the University of Albuquerque in 1953. And so my story is a little unique because most Chicanas, most Mexican American women in the United States are still first generation in universities and colleges. And my unique story is that I'm the third generation, and that my niece right now at UNM is the fourth generation. And a lot of times I get really interesting reactions to that. Like on one hand, it's like, oh, well then, we don't know how to work with you because you're not first generation, right? But the other oftentimes can be from this place of discomfort because we don't know what to do with a fourth generation college educated Chicana, right? When I think about my niece, and third generation when I think about myself. But that's really what the point is, right? Is that hopefully when we talk about privilege, dismantling privilege, redistributing privilege, it's that everybody would have access to that if they choose to do that. And so really, I think that that is part of this bigger conversation of education in New Mexico. And so I'm really proud that that's my heritage, right? Between my grandma, and I should say that it's also my extended family, we're a big family of teachers. But in my immediate family, including my grandma, with my grandma Lola, my mom, my dad, my sister, myself, collectively we have over 150 years of service to the public school systems in the state of New Mexico. And for us, that's a proud part of our family heritage. But part of this is really how being raised in this is the water that I was raised in, right? So this water, how did it prepare me to help my community? And I currently work at a 4-year public institution, Northern New Mexico College, which, by the way, originally started as the Spanish American Normal School. So I'm proud to work at my grandmother's alma mater. And really how we think about the issues of equity that impact our students on a daily basis. When we talk about things about educational heritage, part of it is also looking at some of the grim history. And for me, as a scholar, as a thinker, I tend to really ground myself in a concept of simultaneity. There is a cultural geographer, her name is Doreen Massey, and she talks about how to define space. And I know in New Mexico, we're always grappling with that. And she says one of the ways to define space is as a simultaneity of stories told so far. And so for me, as I think about that simultaneity of stories, particularly at Northern New Mexico College, on the one hand, my grandmother being able to graduate from there has afforded and opened doors for many of the people in my family, for many of the people in her community. A really beautiful story is when my grandmother passed away, it's going to be 10 years in 2008. She was, 97 years old. And at 97, she still had former students come and volunteer. So one of her former students dug her grave, and I'll probably choke up here. Another group of former students prepared the food for the wake. And another group of former students prayed the rosario, right, for her rosaries and for the church service. And so it speaks to the position that educators hold in their communities. Because my grandmother was the type of educator where obviously she had the classroom and the content, but she was also aware of where she came from, was from a place of abject poverty. And so she was also the teacher that would take part of her paycheck to buy shoes and jackets, to buy extra notebooks and pencils. And part of what she would always say is, you know, how can people learn if they don't have shoes on their feet? How can students learn if they don't have a pencil to write with? And this is to say that this beautiful story of my grandmother came from the Spanish American Normal School, but at the same time, we can never forget that that school was an Americanization school. It was also the same place where language and culture was, and I don't use this word lightly, tortured out of students, right? There was different kinds of corporal punishment, there was different kinds of shaming that went on to literally train teachers to teach in English in northern New Mexico. So the other part of it is always complicating it, understanding that education too is always connected to things like colonization and imperialism, and that part of our jobs as critical educators is to always question and unpack and rethink and reimagine schools.